What if the person you ignored today was hiding a secret worth billions? In a city filled with people struggling to survive, one homeless man's story would soon turn the tables. The setup. It was just another cold evening in the city. The streets buzzed with the usual rush of cars and pedestrians, and the air had a bite to it, signaling the coming winter. People walked briskly, heads down, avoiding the homeless man slumped against a battered old bench. He was unkempt, his clothes torn and stained, a cardboard sign beside him that read, "Anything helps." To most passers-by, he was just another face in the crowd of the forgotten. They avoided his gaze, pretending not to see him. He had become invisible to the world. His name was James, but no one ever called him that. He was just another homeless man to them. What they didn't know, however, was that James wasn't always this way. James used to be a prominent figure in the tech world, a brilliant mind whose ideas revolutionized the industry. A billionaire by the age of 30, he had everything: luxury cars, a mansion, and millions in the bank. But life has a funny way of knocking people down when they least expect it. In a tragic turn of events, a series of bad investments, a betrayal from close friends, and a series of unfortunate circumstances led James to lose everything. His fortune vanished in the blink of an eye, and so did his status in the world. But James wasn't just any homeless man. He had lived through the highest highs and the lowest lows, and now, in the cold city streets, he lived a life he never imagined for himself. No one knew his past, and no one cared. He was invisible, until one fateful night. It all started when Officer Daniels, a young cop, was patrolling the area. It had been a quiet night, and the routine of checking in on the usual spots had become monotonous. When he saw James sitting on the bench, the usual irritation bubbled up. Homeless people often caused trouble, blocking public walkways, begging for money, or getting into fights. It wasn't long before Officer Daniels, annoyed and eager to finish his shift, approached James. The conflict. "Hey, you! What's your name?" Officer Daniels barked, his flashlight flicking on, illuminating James's tired face. James, startled, looked up at the officer with tired eyes. His voice was raspy, but his words were clear. "James. Just James." "Just James?" Daniels scoffed. "You're blocking the bench and it's illegal to sleep here. Move along." But James didn't move. He stayed there, staring into the officer's eyes. Officer Daniels tried again, his patience wearing thin. "I'm not asking again. Get up." Something about James's calm demeanor gave Daniels pause. It was as if the man wasn't afraid, like he had nothing left to lose. But Daniels wasn't about to back down. He grabbed James by the arm and pulled him to his feet. "You're coming with me," he said, pushing James toward the patrol car. The arrest was uneventful. Officer Daniels had seen it all before. A homeless man causing trouble, getting arrested, then being let go the next day with nothing to show for it. But this time, something felt different. There was an air of mystery about James. As Daniels drove him to the station, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this man than met the eye. But he didn't have time to think too much about it. His shift was almost over. When they arrived at the station, the usual paperwork began. But when Officer Daniels entered James's name into the system, the results were nothing short of shocking. The computer screen flashed, and Daniels' eyes widened as the information unfolded. James wasn't just some homeless man. He was James Wilder, the once famous billionaire tech mogul who had disappeared from the public eye years ago after a massive financial crash. The world thought he was gone, lost to history. But here he was, sitting in front of him, wearing tattered clothes and a scruffy beard. Daniels froze. He read the details on the screen again, just to be sure. This was the same man who had created some of the most innovative technologies of his time. He was the one who had revolutionized communication, built tech empires, and changed the world. He had been on the cover of every major magazine. And now, he was sitting in a police station, arrested for sleeping on a bench. Daniels couldn't believe it. "You're him, aren't you?" he asked, disbelief evident in his voice. James looked at him, his face impassive. "I was," he said quietly. The climax. What followed next was nothing short of mind-blowing. As Daniels sat down with James, the billionaire explained his fall from grace. He had everything, but it wasn't enough. He had trusted the wrong people, made the wrong moves, and ended up losing it all. His wealth, his reputation, his friends, all gone. "I lost everything," James said, his voice filled with regret. "But sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself." Daniels was stunned by his words. Here was a man who had once controlled the world's most powerful technologies, who had built empires, and yet, here he was, sitting on a cold bench in a rundown part of the city, with nothing but his memories. "What now?" Daniels asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. James leaned back in his chair, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Now? Now I get to choose what comes next. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find a way to rebuild it all." Suddenly, James stood up, his eyes glimmering with determination. "But not the same way," he added. "This time, I'll do it for the people who truly matter." Daniels watched him, stunned. This wasn't the defeated man he had first seen. This was a man who had learned something from his fall, a man with a new purpose, and as James left the station that night, he didn't just walk out as a homeless man. He walked out as someone with a vision, a billionaire with a mission to rebuild, but not for himself. The twist? James didn't want the world to know. He didn't want the fame, the recognition, or the fortune. He just wanted to be human again, to make a difference in ways that truly mattered. And maybe, just maybe, he would do it better this time. James's story is a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The true measure of a person isn't their wealth, but the lessons they learn and the lives they change. If this story moved you, don't forget to share it with someone who might need it. And subscribe for more incredible stories that will challenge everything you think you know.